And man, we are just very excited to welcome in our pal from NFL Network, Bucky Brooks. And you see Bucky everywhere on TV, on social media, all that good stuff. Make sure you give him a follow at Bucky Brooks. And Bucky, we can find you on Raiders.com now, which is very, very exciting. So we're going to talk about your most recent piece that we have on .com in a second. And I think one thing that really stood out to me in reading that for the first time, I think you brought up a great point about how it's really hard to go from being a good team to a great team. And the Raiders in 2021, Bucky, a good football team, now looking to be great in 2022. So I guess philosophically speaking, why is it so hard to make that jump from good to great in the NFL?
Well, it's hard, Eddie, because there's no guaranteed next step. Whatever you did the previous year, there's no carryover. So you have to go through and do the process all over again. And for the Raiders, this is different because now you're doing it with a new coaching staff and a new regime. And so you have different philosophies on how you go about building the team, different philosophies on how you win games. And so to take the next step is tough when you have consistency and continuity, but it's even tougher when the voices at the front of the room changes. And so it's hard in our league to win and win consistently. And so that's why it's such a challenge to go from a good team one year to a great team the next year, because nothing is guaranteed.
You know, and a lot of those moves, or a handful of those moves that the Raiders have executed over the past couple of weeks and months now to go from good to great was kind of the crux of your piece on Raiders.com, focusing on the addition of Chandler Jones and Davante Adams. Now, we've talked a lot about these guys for good reason since they put on the silver and black. But when you look at them kind of as a package, when you look at them as premier players at their position, what does it say about what Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are doing for this building, for this program, that they have top-tier, elite-level guys that want to be here in Las Vegas and playing for them?
It means they understand that it's a talent acquisition business. As much as we can talk about draft and develop, we have seen a shift in the wins in the National Football League where you have to acquire marquee players to be able to get over the top. The last couple of years, we've seen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the LA Rams make big moves. For the Raiders to make this move, it's an understanding that to climb the mountain, you have to have enough blue chip players to be able to do it. Eddie, I will tell you, in most teams, what I've learned in this business, you have to have 8 to 12 blue chip players on your roster to compete at a championship level. Guys that you can say are the top 5 at their position at various areas of the field. And so when you bring in a Chandler Jones and you bring in a Davante Adams, you're now beginning to scale up and put yourself closer to getting that number where you have 8 to 12 blue chippers that allow you to compete with the best teams in the league.
So let's start with Davante here real quick. And you had one line in your piece that really stood out to me, and I would just love for a little more clarity on it because you know way more football than I will ever, you forgot more football than I'll never, ever know in my life. But you said this: if opponents opt to play the Raiders straight up or utilize brackets or double coverage to neutralize number 13 and number 83, that's Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, Adams will torch opponents who grant him free access in single coverage. So for the football, I don't want to say illiterate, but for the football people like me who perhaps aren't as locked into the X's and O's as you are, we talk about that double coverage. We talk about utilizing bracket coverage. So in kind of layman's term, can you just kind of explain what that means and why that's going to be so much better for this offense as a whole going forward?
Okay, so when you're an opponent and you're looking at the Raiders, and let's look at last year's version of the Raiders, you have Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. Those are the primary playmakers in the passing game. So when you go in, you hear opponents always talk about, we want to make this team play left-handed, meaning we want to take away their best guys and make the others do the work to win the game. Well, normally that would mean, hey, let's take away Hunter Renfrow on certain downs so Derek Carr doesn't have the easy completion over the middle of the field. Or let's take away Darren Waller so he doesn't have the opportunity to tilt the field in the Raiders' favor because he is a mismatch nightmare for the opponent. He's too big for DBs. He's too fast for linebackers. So now you got to put extra attention, a safety over top. You have to make sure that you have double coverage or extra eyes on either one of those guys. Well, now if you take that strategy into the game with Davante Adams on the field, if you put a safety over top of Darren Waller, well, now you're saying we're going to go one-on-one on Davante Adams. That's advantage Raiders. If you put a double team, a bracket coverage where you have a safety and a nickel back on Hunter Renfrow, now you're saying it's one-on-one on Darren Waller or Davante Adams. That's advantage Raiders. So by adding a high-level all-pro wide receiver, you now have ensured that one of my top guys, two of my top guys are going to get man-on-man coverage. That is a huge advantage for the Raiders going into the season.
You know, in our conversations with Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniel since Davante arrived in Las Vegas, I think one thing that's really stood out to me in speaking with both of them is they talk about the consistency of Davante. And it's, you know, he's a guy who hasn't done it for 1 year or 2 years. He's done it at a very, very, very high level, an elite level for almost a decade now. But when you look at Davante and what he brings to a football team, and we've talked about all the attention he's going to garner and how that's going to free things up and make life easier for the Hunter Renfros and Darren Wallers of the world. But when you look at his skill set, what makes him so good, Bucky? Because, I mean, this is a guy who, you talk about it, is, you know, widely considered the best wide receiver in football. How does he do it so well?
The two things that he has that separates him from others. He has elite release quickness, meaning at the line of scrimmage, when he's facing press coverage or even off coverage, he has enough different releases to tie defenders in knots. He's not a guy that does the same thing off the line every time. So because of that, it makes it very difficult to get a beat on what route he's running, based on the way that he attacks the early part of the route. The first 5 to 7 yards, he has a variety of different things that he does to get into the route. The second thing that he does is at the top of the route, he has the ability to change paces, and he has the ability to explode out of the break. So when he changes tempo and changes the speed within the route, it prevents the DB from really knowing where he's going and when he's going to stop. And then his ability to get from 0 to 60 in a hurry out of the break allows him to create big separation. So when Derek Carr is ready to release the ball, when he lets the ball go, his receiver is guaranteed to have space between him and the defender, which means more completions. So because he's such a polished route runner and because he has so many tools in the tool bag, it just allows him to consistently get open, and it makes him a tough guard for any opponent trying to figure out how to slow him down.
You know, one storyline that we've heard a lot about since Davante came into town is that connection with Derek Carr. And obviously our people in Fresno are very, very excited that they're reuniting. And it's an exciting, reunion. It's an exciting relationship. It's a relationship that I think is important and I think is a big reason why Davante is ultimately here. But we look at what the last time they played competitive football together, and it's been about a decade, right? So it's not like these guys were together 6 months ago, 12 months ago. It's been a minute. But in terms of that relationship, how valuable is it that Derek and Davante know each other? And yeah, I'm sure it'll take a little bit to kind of knock the rust off. But how important is it that they have that base of knowledge and they know how to work together in such a way that is going to hopefully result in a lot of points for the Silver and Black?
Chemistry and connectivity is everything in the passing game. The number one thing that you have in the passing game is trust. The quarterback has to trust that the receiver is going to be in the spot. The receiver has to trust that when I turn my head out the break, the ball is going to be there. The only way that you develop that is years and years, reps upon reps upon reps of knowing each other, being able to anticipate by body language where a receiver is going to break, being able to see coverage from the same set of eyes, meaning Davante Adams is on the outside. I see that the coverage is going to be this. My quarterback and I are on the same page and wavelength. And so we have a telepathic connection that he knows exactly what I'm going to do. So all of those formative years when they were at Fresno, all those reps that they had in practice, they developed that chemistry. Now, they have to continue to work on that over the course of the summer, but their baseline is already there because there's a friendship, a kinship, a connection that will allow them to quickly do it. That chemistry is everything. And now that Derek Carr not only has that chemistry with Davante Adams that'll continue to grow, but what he already has established with Hunter Renfro and Darren Waller, it now makes the game so much easier for the quarterback to be on the same page with everybody in the huddle.
You know, switching to the defensive side of the football, the other kind of main piece of your initial story on Raiders.com was Chandler Jones and what he's going to bring to this defense. And when we announced that Chandler Jones was going to be coming here, I don't know if there was a more excited player in this building than Max Crosby. They have a relationship going back. They bounce ideas off of each other. But on a football sense, Max is very much aware what having a guy like Chandler Jones on the defensive line is going to mean for him. When we look at Chandler just as a player, another guy, Bucky, who has done it for a very long time at a very high level, what about this addition do you like to the 2022 Raiders in terms of Chandler Jones?
Well, I love it. Okay, so when we think about building a team that can win the division, you got to make sure that you have a team that is built to play the opponents within your division. Now that we look at all of the quarterback play in the division, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, being able to deal with Russell Wilson, you have to have multiple pass rushes to be able to disrupt the timing and rhythm of the passing game with those quarterbacks. Well, now you have two guys, Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, that are proven, prolific pass rushers. Now, the difference is Chandler Jones is an established number one. He has over 100 sacks in his career. He's been in double digits 7 times in his career. So now what has to happen, the offensive coordinator has to make a determination. How do I want to protect my quarterback? Do I want to slide protection, meaning send most of the protection in the direction of Chandler Jones and then run the risk of leaving Max Crosby one-on-one on the backside? Or do I want to slide it to Max Crosby and leave Chandler Jones in a one-on-one matchup? Regardless, the Raiders are fine because both guys have proven effective off the edge. It now allows Patrick Graham to do some creative things. I can put them at opposite sides. Maybe I put them on the same side with one guy kicking inside and running games with the two of them. It allows you to build a pass rushing plan that is always guaranteed to get one of your top pass rushers one-on-one. And that's always what you want as a defensive coordinator, because you're banking that one of my premier pass rushers is going to win if he's single block.
Yeah, and I think if you're Patrick Graham, right, like you look at this situation now, especially on the defensive line that you've walked in, you got to be smiling from ear to ear, knowing, like, to your point, that, hey, I don't have one guy that can get after the quarterback. I got multiple guys that can do it at a really, really high level. But Bucky, I'm glad you brought up the division, the AFC West, a division that has seemingly gotten better and better and better day after day, week after week. In your memory, can you remember a division that has just stacked up and loaded up the way that this one has over the past 6-8 weeks?
No, I haven't seen anything like this. This is unbelievable. I think it's unbelievable, and it reminds me of the AFC West in the golden days, where you had these teams always competing. Because remember, the majority of these teams are AFL rivals, and so going all the way back, now it's a very competitive division. It's a division that has great history with the rivalries, but now we're looking. It has great talent, from quarterback to wide receiver to pass rushers. This division is loaded in what we say are the essential qualities that you must have to be a championship team. You got to have a quarterback, you got to have playmakers, and you got to have pass rushers. It's all about the P's and being able to do it. So passers, playmakers, pass rushers, all of those are present in this division, is why it's going to be the most competitive division in football.
Yeah, I said, Bucky, put all the games in prime time. Give me every AFC West game. Put that in prime time. I know you got the connect with the NFL schedule people, Bucky. Put in a good word for us, will you? But looking, I guess, a little more to the present now. The Raiders started the offseason workout program earlier this week with the new head coach. You get that little bit of extra lead time going into the spring and summer. But how important is this time right now, as we sit here in mid-April, for Josh McDaniels and his staff to really let this group of guys know this is what we're trying to do, this is what the goal is, and this is how we plan to get there in 2022?
Yeah, this is a really important time of year. It's an important time of year because what you have going on is you have the strength and conditioning program kicked off. It's really important that you're talking about being a bigger, faster, stronger team, being well-conditioned so your team is able to not only play the full 17, but they're thriving near the end of the season as they're getting into the tournament. The other part that's important is the introduction to the playbook, the introduction to the philosophy on offense, defense, and special teams, making sure that everyone is beginning to understand, here's our collective plan for winning games. So the offense complements the defense, they both complement the special teams, and everyone understands it's a collective effort for this team to win games. And so from the Raiders' perspective, the preparation starts now, because the only way that you can start thinking about being a championship team is you have to outwork everybody, not only in the division, but in the conference and then throughout the league. And that starts with the offseason program. You have to win the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bucky, we're going to talk a lot about the offseason workout program. We're going to talk a lot about the needs that this team still has to address as we get ready for the 2022 NFL Draft, which will take place here in beautiful Las Vegas. But yeah, we're going to see a lot of you on Raiders.com coming up, Bucky. We are very excited to kick this off. We're excited for our fans to get to know you a little bit better. We're excited for you to get to know us and our fans a little bit better as well. So this was great. We'll talk to you very soon. And thank you for the time. We'll catch up, all right?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Eddie.